I call a segue to Slumbertown. I mean, I say Eric wasn't Lullaby live stream wind down party supposed to be like a segue to Slumbertown? Maybe it was supposed to be that, but needless to say, I'm still awake. I'm not quite ready to go to bed yet, but I should go to bed soon. I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's like I don't really feel like going to bed right now. I can tell I'm tired, but it's also the case that I might as well stay up till I'm really tired. So when I crash for days, not a full like couple days, but I'll be crashy for a couple of days. Crash-esque, you might say. But one reason why I knew I wanted to stream a little bit before bed is I just knew, hey, I want to sit, smoke a cigarette while talking to nobody. So why would I miss out on this golden opportunity to do that? I will reiterate what a point I made in a short, which was as follows. That movie Quiz Lady on Hulu is so good. Super good. Is Rachel in here or is she? No, she's not in here. Okay. One way to see if she's in here is just to turn on the blazing light and find out if it wakes her up, Oops, you were in here. I couldn't see anything without turning on the light, though, so. Alright. Now we're back in the smoking rooms. Something that seems to offend a lot of people, huh? It is very cold. It seems maybe slightly warmer than it was an hour or two ago, but I think it's just because I have the fan off. The thermostat on the computer, the Microsoft weather thing said it was 40 degrees, but I'm suspecting it's a little colder now, like 38. I haven't gotten any sleep yet tonight, but this is going to be a pretty short live stream. I'm going to be going to bed in not very long. I'm going to smoke a cigarette and go back inside, smoke a couple of bowls, muse a little bit about the liminal space between being up on amphetamine and being, running out of all the gas. That area that I'm in right now where still up, but it won't be for long. And once I crash out and I get back up again tomorrow, I'll probably feel kind of undermotivated, even to do basically the things that aren't a big deal. Blast. Your sleeping bag. Blast, blast, blast. Blast, 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 play. So, before bed tonight, what I'm going to do is as follows. I'm going to go back inside in the living room. I'm going to take off all this wintry clothes that I have on. I'm going to turn up the heater just 1 or 2 degrees. It's a little chilly inside. And I'm going to slowly, gently, ever so tenderly pull a couple of bong rips. Then Show Media and I are going to brush each other's hair. And then I'll probably go to bed after that. You're wishing me a jolly good night and day. Thanks, Melting Zero. I hope yours is jolly good as well. What's a level up from jolly good? Ecstatically good? Well, neither do I. It's more of a primates grooming one another kind of social gesture thing than it is actual need for our hairs to be combed. So it's jelly great than jilly rad. Wow. Learn something new every day. Finally, it's Jolly Supreme. And Jolly Supreme, don't forget Jolly Supreme. Could you please explain to me FI polar? I'm not sure really what to say about it. I mean, it's like any other polar function. It's very, primitively developed as a way of paying attention because it's your least competent function. It's an absolute value, so in some sense it's more conscious than 8th slot, but a lot less competent. Jolie Ma. Jolie Ma is the... How you doing? Jolie Ma. Really? Well, I'm doing Jolly Supreme. Well, you're doing a lot better than me then, obviously. You remember someone crying trying to give them electrolytes to make up for their water loss. That, I don't, you might be a ENTP. It wouldn't shock me at all. But something about you just my intuition first as far as you can kick it, but my intuition says, something about you says more like 4th slot FE, 8th slot FI with the dog thing. Although I had an equivalent kind of like FI polar thing when my friend's grandmother died, and I was like, she died like 2 days ago. Can't you get over it? That was a while back. Needless to say, that didn't particularly fly. What you indicate is sort of a TE absolute value 5th slot. Like, well, how expensive are dogs? You're looking for a solution. Here, have some electrolytes to replenish your water loss. One thing that Rachel said was an FI polar thing for me was we were watching this show called When Vacations Attack, and there was this still makes me laugh. This funny footage of these people at an air show. Like, who goes to air shows anyway? Are you trying to get a sore neck? But anyways, people at a show, they had this big helicopter that it's Got like two propellers, one on each side instead of one propeller over the top of it. And it flew down too close to this tree and it started blowing all these big tree limbs down on all these people underneath it. And they're all like running away and stuff. I don't know, for some reason I just struck my funny bone and I laughed and laughed at that. And Hersh was like, that's super bipolar. Like, but look, the helicopter, what a bunch of idiots. They have no need to fly that helicopter, just flying it so that other idiots can look at them flying it. It's just a thing in the sky, for fuck's sake. It's loud and makes a lot of wind. Why would you want to go seek out more of that? Oh, look, planes are flying over us. Woo! Wow. Do you see that one? That was another plane. It was a different kind of plane. It flew by fast. I'm sorry. Well, that shit is unspeakably boring. Pointless. What could be more boring and pointless than an air show except maybe a NASCAR race? I mean, they'd be neck and neck for boring pointlessness. If you went to a NASCAR race and you had like an oxygen tank so you have to breathe in exhaust and you had earphones to block out the noise, at least you wouldn't have to strain your neck. But on the other hand, if you lie down at the air show, you could probably just look up without straining your neck. So it's kind of a toss-up. It's a crapshoot. What's a worse way to spend time? Watching a NASCAR race or watching an air show? Well, one of the worst days imaginable is you go to a NASCAR race in the morning and an air show in the afternoon, followed by a sightseeing bus tour. Okay, that's pretty FI polar, buddy. I wouldn't, I don't know if FI polar. I would not laugh at that because I'd feel uncomfortable about the whole thing. Like, oh, great, there's like disabled people here. We're supposed to pretend like we don't notice. Your response sounds a little more FE4 instrumental. Mine sounds a little bit more free, absolute value, hyper concerned about things that might make you feel awkward. But you know, I can't tell with you without typing you. Even then, if you gotta narrow it down to INTP, ENTP, that's a tough one to distinguish between sometimes. You gotta really push the students SE polar or SE eighth. That one's easier to distinguish than FI polar or FI eighth. That's a hard one to distinguish for me, especially because I'm FI polar. So it's like, what is this mysterious goo? For you, I mean, I don't know anything for sure without actually talking to you and typing you. What I'm telling you is your approach to argumentation, your excellent observations, um, the way you write, the way you write in particular is more consistent with NTP than NTJ, but you could conceivably be an INTJ. You're no ENTJ, I'll tell you that much. Well, I can't type people from the chat. Sometimes I just am like wildly misled by the chat because, of course, chatters have the opportunity to select, be very selective in what they choose to type into the thing. So, you could be an INFJ who crafted each thing you write extremely carefully to validate on my metrics, which would be an INFJ thing to do. And I wouldn't be able to tell you just from the chat. You could be an ISFJ like Oliver Linehan, who frequently writes, talks, and sounds like an NTP, although he's probably generally restating things that I've stated. But it's like, whereas you're doing more. Sometimes Oliver provides some really interesting and informative explanations about things, but it's not so much about cognitive functions as like people's motivations and drives and stuff. I found there was one comment of his that I read, discovered like years too late or something, but it was brilliant, perfect. I made a video about how great a comment it was. But he's an ISFJ, so don't underestimate people's ability when they're given time to operate at their pace to be brilliant. It's like I may never be as good at a line cook at cooking a bunch of hamburgers, but any given single hamburger that the line cook or I make, I'm just as likely to cook a good hamburger as that person is, even if they're like a famous hamburger chef. We were winding down, but we never actually got all the way wound down. I've been up watching. I watched this movie Quiz Lady on Hulu. It was so good. Oh my god, it was so good. It was deep. It was funny, but the funniness of it, um, the funniness of it was secondary to the just richness of the whole thing. It was just a beautiful, rich film. It was wonderful. I highly recommend it on Hulu. It's called Quiz Lady. Well, I kept hearing about it too, or seeing ads for it or something. I guess that's where I encountered it. I saw an ad for it that interested me while I was watching a football game, I think. And then I was done playing around with whatever I was playing around with, and I just like, oh, maybe I want to watch something before I go to bed. I watched that movie, and it was so good that I was really crying up a storm at the end of it. It was very moving. But it also, because it was so good, it made me want to talk a little bit about that. Just sort of like not quite go to bed yet. Acacia, are you having message retraction excess syndrome? Well, I've got that one like Chinese lady who's been in a lot of things lately. She's pretty funny. Nobody actually throws up. No, nobody throws up. No, I don't know who the lady's name is. Well, she's kind of a dorky looking. She's pretty, but she's kind of like dorky pretty, and she's kind of a comedian looking lady. She did a lot of comedy stuff before, but this movie, it's not relying on her being like a comedy person to be funny when it's funny. She's very faithful to the character she's playing. She's playing like an ISTJ. Sandra. Oh, Sandra. Right. Um, I thought it was beautifully cast. Her older ESFP sister in the movie is like well into her 40s, but still ESFPing. Like, today's new truth is I'm going to be a life coach. You know? Well written characters. Like, the two main ladies in it are very well written and consistent typologically. ISTJ is Sandra O. The other lady is ESFP. I don't know what her name is. I don't really recognize her, but they both do a fantastic job. And I think Will Ferrell does a beautiful job in the movie as well. He's also not being funny. He's playing a sweet, simple, kind of almost childlike game show host who's also, in some ways, like the only adult there. Aquafina? Isn't that a drink? Isn't that a kind of water? Danny Zuko? I'm not sure who Danny Zuko is. Aloe Vera? Nora Lum is her actual name, but she goes by Aquafina. Awkward finale. That's the other lady in the movie? Is Nora Lum? From Greece? Sandra Oh was not in Greece, Acacia. Neither was Danny Zuko. I don't know. You must be thinking about an entirely different movie than Grease. I don't know what you're thinking about. It is John Travolta. Yeah, but Sandra Oh was not in Grease, Acacia. Yes, she was in Quiz Lady, but no, she's not in Grease. Oh, you're talking about the character's name is Sandy O in Grease. Oh. That's why it was so racist that they had a white girl play that character. I'm trying to figure out, I can't quite put a name to it, who Rachel Feinstein is imitating when she does this, like, well, golly, Dad, I really know I could be a pilot if I tried my hardest. Yeah, there's a certain, like, golly gee Willikers kind of 1940s Julie Garland-esque quality to the imitation, but I swear it's an imitation of somebody specific, but I can't pin it down as to who it is. Oh, John Travolta's character's name is Danny Zuko in Grease. Well, obviously, I didn't know nearly as much about Grease as I thought I did. Here I was talking like a big talker like a big knows everything guy. Really, I didn't know anything. I'll have to live with this for the rest of my life. Grease was filmed at your high school? Where do you go? Like olden days high school of Los Angeles? Yes, that's where she went. She went to the olden days high school of Los Angeles. If I had thought about it some, I should have immediately triggered when I said olden days high school of Los Angeles. I should have thought John Marshall. Oh, I know where it is. It's a bad school that has uh, primarily poor kids going to it, even though there are very nice neighborhoods that feed into that school. Those nice neighborhood kids mostly go to a private school, but some of them still go to John Marshall. It's like it's like an urban high school, so it's kind of rough, but it's got a slightly gentrified quality to it. Well, I don't know. Maybe you were one of the people from the rich neighborhood. I know John Marshall because I had a former debater who is definitely not poor who went to John Marshall because his parents didn't. Trouble, you stop it right now. You stop it. Because his parents didn't send him to private school. Well, his sister went to Immaculate Heart. And he coached her there. Danielle Dosh went to Immaculate Heart. David Dosh went to Marshall. And he lone wolfed it. But his sister, you could have a conversation with both Danielle and David Dosh, Acacia, and not have any problem. Were they good? Yeah, they were really good. David Dosh was my first excellent debater. And really my first he and I learned to coach and do debate at the same time kind of. I learned to coach it while he learned to do it. But Danielle Dosh, she achieved at a higher level than her brother, being coached by her brother at Immaculate Heart. And the rest, he coached the Immaculate Heart team while she was there. And she attained, in I think her junior year, maybe it was her senior year, but I think it was her junior year, she set the record for TOC bids. She had like 12 or 13 of them or something, which is just fucking nuts. Okay, I mean, you don't probably know enough about debate to know how incredibly impressive that is. Now, she didn't actually, yeah, Dosh, like that. That's how it's spelled. Danielle is the sister, the younger sister. David's the older brother. What kind of things do we debate? Different, all kinds of topics. It's like policy is a different format. It's not resolutional debate. Instead, it's planned debate. They give you a topic area like the United States will substantially increase funding to public infrastructure. And then you have to come up with your own plan as a way of doing that. That's your affirmation. That's a different way of debating fundamentally. But in the resolutional debates, which are PF and Lincoln Douglas, those you have some of the resolutions given. The same resolution is being debated by in every room in every round. People have different apps and eggs, but they're not plans. You don't have to create a formal plan text. And in Lincoln Douglas, you can, but you're gonna run afoul of some people who won't vote for plans in LD like me because plans don't belong in LD. Um, Lincoln Douglas debate, you get what are positioned as value resolutions, but always have a policy element to it. The example I usually use is it is morally justified for repeated victims of domestic violence to use deadly force against their abusers. So it's debating a normative question, what they call a values question, which is not really a values question, but this is what it's called in debate in LD. What you're really debating is always the same thing. What comprises justice? And you're not, you're either being honest about what you're doing, or you're trying to position around that in various ways. But it'll link to a specific policy matter so that you have specific content to argue with as well as just generics and philosophy arguments, right? So it's like the United States federal government should end tax subsidies for oil and natural gas corporations. Of course, you get that topic. It's a topic about what the government's relationship with the tax code and politics should be. Should we politicize the tax code? Well, the resolution itself was skewed politicized because there is no such thing as a tax subsidy. There are tax loopholes, or in other words, deductions or whatever, things you can write off. So you get some Democrats go into Congress, they want to incentivize oil companies to invest in green energy. So they say, all right, whatever money you spend investing in green energy, you can write that off from your total profit, get taxed less. So then the oil company does it. Then the next crop of Democrats comes in and they go, why are we giving tax subsidies to oil companies? Because you wanted to incentivize their green energy shit. Remember, fucktards? Socionics is a mess. It's a mess because it put the cart before the horse. It didn't ask the right questions first. It started with MBTI's wrongness and said, let's fix this wrongness while unconsciously failing to affirm. It's like they got ahead of themselves. They understood that MBTI was wrong. There were certain things they could fix about it, but they needed to step back and say, okay, stop. What are we doing? What comprises the criterion for success if to know that we have done it correctly? If you ask a socionics person, what is socionics attempting to do? The best answer you could possibly get is explain personality. But that is a woeful answer. You probably wouldn't even get that. What is defensible typology attempting to do? It's attempting to model human consciousness as it expresses via attentional manners. What does personality have to do with that? Personality type is a specific configuration of attentional manners. There's 16 specific configurations possible for, for reasons implicit to the mechanics, which I could explicate, but I won't right now. That's a real answer, right? So then you say, well, what is attention? And you say, attention is the stuff of your metaphysical self in the same way that blood and flesh is the stuff of your body. Attention is measured in time, and there are 4 discrete kinds of attention, each of which can express via, each of which can have either a communication or experiential expression. You know, it's like, those are real explanations. If you ask me, what does it mean, communication expression? I'd say, well, specifically, it's attention that's dealing and prioritizing as a means of attention low resolution data versus high resolution data. Well, what's that distinction mean? Well, low resolution data is meanings, symbols, icons, images, logos, you know, the things that aren't the full experience. If I remember exactly how an apple pie smells, that's a higher resolution kind of data than if I remember that I smelled apple pie, which is a much lower resolution kind of data and requires much less processing time, power, and memory space and stuff, right? So, in that regard, people who are engaged with communicative attentional manners are engaged in our communicative representations of reality much more than they are engaged in the reality itself. You won't find me several days into a Naked and Afraid episode realize I'm in my temple here in the wilderness. I need to sit on this rock. I just need to let my third eye chakra open and just let the jungle speak to me, and it will provide. And then find the right log a little while later or something. But why won't you find me doing that? Well, because that's not how I link with meanings. It's not how I link with physicalities at all. I watched an episode earlier tonight where an ESFP did that. A dude, you know, and what did that indicate to me? Well, first of all, why was he even still there after days of ongoing physical discomfort, being eaten by bugs, being cold, being naked, lying on sticks on the ground? Why was he even still there? SI ignoring rather than SI fourth. You might be able to pull off Naked and Afraid if you're an ENFP, but ENTP, I do not think so. SI fourth is a big part of that, but SI ignoring, SI polar, not such a problem. You know, even SI 8 can hang. SI third, not going to make it long. INFPs, INTPs, they aren't cut out for Naked and Afraid. The only way in which they're cut out for Naked and Afraid is that their SE is so bad, once they're there, it's like hard for them to make a decision to leave. How do I know it uses less brain power? Well, I'm not saying it necessarily it uses. See, this is the mistake we're constantly making, right? I'm paying attention to what the words mean in their most binary, distinction making kind of way. I'm excising the mushiness of introverted feelings of, well, do I feel happy or sad? Well, I feel kind of both. Well, then what do they mean even? Why can they coexist even though they're contradictory? Well, they just can because it's really complicated and we have to just kind of meow about it for a while. Well, that's not making any kind of useful progress intellectually because, you know, your feelings, your subjectivities are not intellectual endeavor. Most importantly, the thing is, who you are is what you pay attention to. So, because I'm paying attention to the words, what they mean, explanations, defining things in operationalized ways so that you can use them with other things as moving parts to do things and be held accountable to those definitions, stuff like that, right? It moves a lot faster. It's a lot more communicatively suited than your feelings. If I were to try to explain something about my feelings, none of us would leave here feeling as though we learned anything relevant to ourselves, probably. Unless you're paying attention to ways in which someone else's subjectivities resonate with your own. So it's like, well, does the function do this? Well, a person's paying attention to their subjectivities and how it resonates with somebody else's subjectivities. And so, how does that play out? Well, which kind of subjectivities are they paying attention to? Well, they're paying attention to, say, their deliberative subjectivities first, and then uh, let's say you're talking about ISFP. Then their action subjectivities second. Or let's even say you're talking about ISTJ. They're dealing with their knowledge subjectivities first, their interface subjectivities second, their deliberation subjectivities third, and their action objectivities fourth. So, what does that mean? It means that person's way of being is to know subjectively first. What does this mean to say it takes up more brain power or whatever? Well, what I mean is the data is more high resolution. So, what's the trade off there? The trade off is deftness in details, specific examples versus deftness in intuitive, holistic correctness. The distinction can also be made explained like this: like the difference between an SI dom and an NI dom is one person is paying attention to what's very important to them, but generalizes very poorly. And the other person's paying a lot of attention to what generalizes well, but has an almost shocking difficulty understanding what they're feeling, why they're feeling, how they should feel. You know, they try to look to external sources to provide information on their subjectivities. It's not because their subjective functions are bad. It's because definitionally, what does it mean to prioritize as your dominant nature a way of paying attention that is focused on what's most relevant and what universalizes most? It means you're least conscious, but still somewhat competent companion function of that is the other knowing function. That is what you have to sacrifice. To have to be maximally conscious in NI, you have to be minimally conscious in SI because NI is the exclusion of personal experience, in particular stuff that might be just relevant to you, and a fixation on that which is most relevant and determine it on the most universal level. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have your universality and be steeped in particular examples. You can't be rich in all your particular shit, how each of your own farts smell, and also be great at knowing what universalizes. If you know how great each of your farts smell, then you're clearly not going to be good at knowing what's universally appealing. Because after all, you're an expert at which of your own farts you like the smell of most. Nobody else wants to smell any of your farts. You see the point I'm making? It's implicit to who you are. The idea that you have an 8-slot function called meow is misleading. But it's the best way we have to deal with the fact that it's like, well, being a dominant person, a dominant function as a person means necessarily that because you're attending to this in this way, you've not chosen the other path. And that gets defined as super unconscious 8-slot function. Which I believe is also the definition for your mom. I'll turn this out, then that won't happen anymore. Right. Just because something's a personal framework doesn't mean it's not a framework. It just means that it's the more personal something is, the less communicatively relevant it is. The more universally resonant and relevant something is, the less particular it is to you. If I tell you my story about going to the grocery store and start delineating what I got first and then what I got second. First I went to the lettuce section. I got 2 bags of lettuce / salad. And then I walked down past the frozen burgers. I didn't get any of those. I didn't get any chicken or anything at the deli. I turned and I shook my head at the bratwursts and at the bacon and to the lunch meat that's on that side. And I said, you know what, let's just go straight to the coffee aisle and get this coffee creamer out of the way. Headed straight up there, got 2 of the jugs of coffee creamer. Well, look, you might be able to relate to this particular experience, but the point is it doesn't have any relevance to anything. SI always has that particular obscure memory you need if you're an SI Dom when that happens to turn out to be a relevant thing, but it requires intuition to know that it's relevant, or what relevance is exactly. Now, what I mean by relevance is like this. If let's say I go into a restaurant to get some takeout food, and I got gas all over my clothes, and I go to light a cigarette inside, I space out, try to do that. My clothes catch on fire. I'm all on fire. I'm rolling on the ground to put myself out, and I just get burn marks all over their store, like ruin a bunch of shit and knock over a bunch of tables, break a bunch of dishes, etc. And then they're mad at me, and I go, well, I'll give you a good Yelp review. Now the thing is, that's an example of somebody not getting that one thing vastly outweighs and is vastly more relevant in understanding the holistic situation than the other thing, right? The fact that you come down and half burn down my restaurant and break a bunch of shit and think you're going to get out of this whole liability clusterfuck you engendered with leaving a good Yelp review means you don't get relevance. You might not call it relevant. You might call it weighting or something else, but ultimately it all cycles around the central notion of relevance. Things are relevant if you think about it in a court sense. Well, Judy told me that he was dangerous this whole time. Well, that's not relevant because it's hearsay. That means you can't correctly factor that piece of information into any decision-making calculus without factoring in something that's much more likely to be misleading, or at least as likely to be misleading as it is informative. Why? Because it lacks relevance. Well, in the Yelp review thing, if both parties are objective about the situation, the person who caused all this huge amount of damage and burning and stuff is going, oh my God, I'm so sorry, let me pay for this as much as I can afford or something. They're doing some stuff like that to try to rectify the damage they've done. If they think they can rectify the damage they've done simply by leaving a good Yelp review, and that when the restaurant's not satisfied with this exchange of, well, I'll leave you a good Yelp review, then the person whose solution is to leave a good Yelp review is going around saying, well, it's a he said, she said thing. The restaurant says I caused some problems. I offered to give them an excellent solution, and they don't accept it. And, it's like, oh my God. Well, that person is either lying or doesn't get relevance, right? Whether or not you're going to leave a good Yelp review is irrelevant. The first question that must be answered before any other question can be answered is, what are you going to do about all this liability you incurred when you damaged my restaurant? If they then propose leave a Yelp review, you'd say that is insufficient mitigation for the harm, right? It lacks proportionality. Proportionality is an element of relevance. Sending a quick hello to none other than the best YouTuber here. And again, got to go back to my exams, which could stay longer. See you later, FF18. I am the best YouTuber here. I'm talking to famous people. Well, it's either me or Rachel. So the thing is, we all can, relevance is something that is, we all have some intuition about. If we're arguing about whether cats should be allowed to eat wet food sometimes, and I say, well, I don't like to eat wet food, that's clearly not relevant. The question is not whether cats like to eat wet food even, so it can't even conceivably be stretched into some semblance of relevance. The question is, should cats be allowed to eat wet food? Whether or not you like wet food has nothing to do with the question of whether or not cats should be allowed to eat wet food. So, people who are NI-polar, for example, they don't get relevance. If you say, like, this is a felony murder case, what's the determinant factor? The determinant factor is, did the death occur during the commission of the felony or before or after the commission of the felony? So the determinant factor is, where on the timeline does it occur? NI-polar people can't grasp what I just told you at just naturally, like I just did, right? There is a correct answer to it. What is the only relevant factor in determining whether this death comprises felony murder? The only relevant factor is whether the death occurred during the commission of a felony. Now, that's a necessary but insufficient condition to establish felony murder. So there's an order of operations. That's part of the relevancy schemata as well. First, you have to answer the question of whether or not the death occurred during the commission of a felony. Now, this, of course, is predicated on you establishing two elements. One, that it occurred during the behavior in question, and two, that behavior in question was felonious. However, just because you've established that a death occurs during the commission of a felony and that the felony was felonious is not in itself sufficient to establish felony murder, because you have to show some linkage to the felony and the death. If George is out back of the store with ear things on, chainsawing some logs, while an armed robbery goes down behind his back in the store, and he doesn't notice it going on, but while it's happening, he accidentally chops off his leg and bleeds to death. You know, let's say it's more instantaneous than that, okay? Because I don't want you to be able to make the argument that the people inside would have intervened and saved him had it not been the fact they were occupied by an armed robber. So he accidentally chainsaws his head clean off, just decapitates himself. Has absolutely nothing to do with the felony. Yes, the death occurred during the commission of the felony on the same property, but the person who died was completely unaware of the felony going on. There was nothing that would happen any different had there not been a felony going on. Then, you're going to have a harder time establishing the case for felony murder. Granted, that's unlikely to happen. Well, the thing is, sure, there could be a larger picture that we're unaware of, but we're not trying to address something in an unresolved frame. So it's like, it's possible to pick any number of frames to resolve something through, but for communicative things, there's a proper frame to resolve them through. And for subjective frames, and for subjective stuff, it doesn't really frame out. It's not communicated. There aren't arguments, I don't know which we you're talking about. That might be absolutely relevant to we just don't know. Now, I mean, who is this we that just don't know? Acacia. The point is, well, you preceded it. You set the table. You wanted me to go with a plural first person pronoun. I just said, okay, fine. I'm gonna throw Acacia that bone. I'm gonna use we as she clearly prompted me to do with her earlier example. We're not trying to. Right. Look, what I'm saying, Acacia, is that relevance is like art, okay? It is the case that if, when I gave my speech and everybody was looking at me funny, that I had a scuff on my shoes, that my zipper was down a little bit, that I had failed to put my pocket square in quite evenly, and that I had a massive piece of asparagus on my face, okay? It is the fact, it is in fact the case, that the reason people were staring at me was not because of the scuff on my shoe, was not because my zipper was down partway, was not because my crooked pocket square, even though we can imagine a world in which those things were what caused people to look at me weird. That in this case it was not, because there was one factor that was so substantially more relevant, right? This huge piece of asparagus on my face. We can't prove it. It's holistic, like things that are good or shitty, like songs and stuff, right? Because relevance, like things that are good, is all about NI. It's holistic. You countervalue it, that's why you're pushing back 6 slot. Well, that's just you being you. But be aware that your function bias is causing you to deny NI its proper and appropriate and justly afforded domain, jurisdiction. You may not like relevance, just like I don't like fucking solvency and efficiency and stuff. But I don't deny that TE lays claim to those virtues. You're being a devil's butt advocate? Well, that's good. I'm happy with it. I'm happy you are. And I'm just responding as though I'm talking to a devil's butt advocate. You know? As usual, I'm making arguments opposed to licking the devil's butt. That's my general position on it. I oppose 2 things: genocide and rimming demons. No, you also asked to be called Ishmael. You just forgot about it. You know why? Because you hate relevance. I'm just joking, Acacia. I don't think whatever arguments you're making are like you. They're just the words you're saying. But no, I won't call you Ishmael. Oh, it's relevant. It's relevant and it's on. You know what's relevant on? Off. But is it though? Yeah. You can't even define on without off. I mean, you could, but it would be a poor definition. So what's a good definition for on then, Eric? What you're fucking watching right now, bitches. This motherfucker is on. That's not a definition. Want me to define your face with my fist? Cow. No, I don't want you to do that. That's not even possible. Your fist has no capacity to define things. Not even like this. No, not even like that. Well, 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 well. Turned is relevant to on. Off is relevant to on. Under? No, I don't think it's relevant to on. We're both prepositions, but it doesn't necessarily make them relevant. It depends. The thing is, most things you have to have a question. That's why all proper argumentation is understood as a question. So even a resolution, like all good men should go to the Taco Bell. it's fundamentally a question. Should all good men go to the Taco Bell? And the affirmation says yes, and the negation says no. Everything that's correctly argued about can always be converted into a question. Well, I'll admit that under does tend to fly his name my radar. But that makes him no more unobserved than Over, which tends to its name my radar as well in a flight pattern of some sort. But I tell you what doesn't fly under my radar. The ground. Why not? Because the ground doesn't fly. The ground is the thing that is being flown over. It's important to remember that. People think, well, sure the ground can fly. No. The ground could not possibly fly because if the ground were to fly, it would need a ground to fly over. This explains a lot about a lot of things. A lot of things are like that. People don't understand that they can't have their words and mean nothing to and accomplish anything. They can have their words and mean nothing to but not accomplish anything. And meaning something means something. It's like you can articulate what, like, this person is actually saying something because meow, 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 meow. And this person is not saying anything because meow, 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 meow. And be correct or incorrect about those things. Remember, the best arguments are not arguments. They're accurate descriptions of what people are doing argumentationally. Which is what I do. Yes, my accurate descriptions about what people are doing argumentationally themselves tend to become arguments because people don't want to learn things from me. They want to argue with me. But like, if I tell somebody, well, okay, the reason why that shouldn't carry much weight here is it's a generic about this general category of thing, but the generic is predicated on this general category of thing having mechanism yeah. And while you might see similarities and call my thing in this general category of thing, my thing did not have mechanism yeah, and thus cannot possibly be subject to the harms you articulate about things of thing yeah, It's like those kind of arguments are what actually, that you, in those instances, you're not trying to argue with somebody. You're just explaining what is, You want to illustrate a kid's book? Well, why not you illustrate my kid's poem, Francis and the Dents? Because a kid's book, it'd just be like one like 8 stanza poem or something spread across a bunch of pages. It's ridiculous how little writing you have to do to make a kid's book. It's a kid's poem. Have you ever heard Francis and the Dents? No, the Dents. Let me see if I can find that piece of writing. I know where it is. I'll read it to you. It's one of my kids' poems that I wrote. Shel Silverstein is he's not terrible. There's Dr. Seuss, who's fantastic. There's like assorted classic one-off things like um, Goodnight Moon, some shit like that. I don't know. And there's meh shit like Shel Silverstein. It has some really compelling stuff, but it's not really for kids. It's depressing. Just because he's drawing a picture with it doesn't make it for kids. This is for kids. Okay. Francis. There was a girl named Frances Goss who knew what lived between her teeth, who was obsessed with dental floss, who queried then her brother Keith if teeth left unattended bore. It's kind of small to read. Make it bigger. Well, I'll just go closer to it. Or maybe I can put on these glasses that I can see kind of far away with. Where did they go? Here they are. Yeah, actually, that works fine. I'll start over. There was a girl named Frances Goss who knew what lived between her teeth, who was obsessed with dental floss, who queried then her brother Keith if teeth left unattended bore some little creatures who would build a hut or two, a general store, a barber's shop, a chandler's guild, a stable with a smithy near, until the motor car replaces a ballroom with a chandelier where they would go to dance their paces. Her brother indicated yes and told her they were called the Dents. He warned his sister, don't forget, the Dents would squat and pay no rents. These creatures were a nasty bunch, who trod inside with mud on shoes, who got in food fights every lunch, who loudly voiced offensive views. But Keith again, now as before, made Frances roll her eyes a bit. She knew already so much more than he about these fabled dents. In truth, she'd known when she'd asked, had learned of them from Pucker Tart. Yet she showed fear, though quite relaxed, that brother Keith might feel smart. These dents sound dangerous indeed, said Frances to the older Keith. I'll turn to you when next I need advice about my lovely teeth. But Frances's dents long ago had bended to her management and long since learned how to forego their sloppiness and damaging. In fact, she'd put dents into groups and sent them out as work for hire. They passed out flyers, jumped through hoops, and worked for years and then retired. And Frances kept inside her mouth, behind her second bottom molar, an old folks' home built facing south and powered green with only solar. Which brings us back to dental floss, the way that Frances kept things clean and stopped her dents from getting cross, and thus became their royal queen. So that's a kid's poem, right? It's a story about little creatures that live in your mouth. It's about dental hygiene. Here's the link to it. It could use a little editing, you know. Probably. Probably Keiths are called Queef when they're bullies. They're probably also called just Keith. Keith. You're a Keith. Do whatever you want. It'd be cool. It's like, I bet if you illustrated it, I edited it a little cleaner up, you get Ruben to publish it. He'd just be like, I got this great thing. And everyone would be like, yeah, you do. We want to buy it, whatever it is. We don't even know. We don't even want to look at it, read anything. We just want to buy it because you're selling it like, firemen sell hotcakes at the fireman's hotcake breakfast. We get that all to go together, then, then all of a sudden, we're rolling in the big children's literature dough. Like we've been making like $100 a piece. Split it 3 ways. I could write the poem, which I already done, so it's easy for me to do. I could clean it up, make it shorter a little bit, edit it, make it a little simpler in some of the language in a couple spots. It's not perfect by any means. I'm not sure if that's the final version of that or what, but I could clean it up a bit. But then you could draw pictures or whatever. And then the only person who matters could do the only work that matters. Because otherwise, we're just twiddling our buttholes for no reason at all. However, if Ruben could go from, what might be kind of a cool thing to do, saying like, well, I will do meow, meow, meow to see if it flies. Then we throw it off a cliff. If it doesn't fly, you'll hear a thud. Oh yeah, I could churn out a billion poems a day. But it's like that one poem, even if I edited it to get rid of like 2 or 3 stanzas worth of shit, would still be a full-size children's book. Would require like 20 pictures or something. If you want like a simpler children's poem, here's one for you. When adults do have some kids, their kids are children for a while. Until let's start over. When some people have some kids, they are that kind of they're children for a while. And later on, they later on they get older. The end. Did you just draw pictures for that one? Little Johnny was a boy who did some childhood stuff. He had a ball and dog a bike and still was not enough. So then he flew a kite and went to summer camp. By Halloween, he found himself all dressed up as a vamp. Ire is the end of that word, I should add. Because if I don't, then it'll make your English teacher sad. The end. You know that one? That was a pretty good one. Once there was a little girl who liked some girly stuff. She liked some glitter, ponies, and some clothes and clothes that weren't too rough. She said one day to mom and dad, I love being feminine. But mom and dad just yelled at her and said, that's not very feminist of you. Stop being so gender role normative. And she learned an important lesson that day. She had to spank her brother and her dad in order to learn how to be a strong woman. I got a camel toe. Yeah, you know, it's not vagina lips. I actually have a camel toe from a camel though. I chopped off its foot for Christmas. This is why I like staying up too long. I get extra silly. Although one bad thing about staying up extra too long is I tend to get stuff rubbed in my eye. Be more like Eminem, huh? Chicka, 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 chicka. I'm Eminem. Chicka, chicka. Like that. Jesus is king and he wants this relationship with you all. He loves you all so much. Stay safe and stay blessed in Jesus' name. Well, thanks a lot, Levi. You've come to share the good news. Dominatrix is always the fix little girl. Like your little sissy is a little too prissy. The fix little girls? The fix for... You think they're the ones who end up becoming dominatrixes? I don't know. Not sure. I haven't followed the careers of that many little girls I've known that closely. Except for Delilah, then. She's currently unemployed. Well, she could probably be a good dominatrix. I have faith in her. I think I should text her that. Hey, Delilah, you should become a dominatrix. I wonder what she'd think of that text. She'd probably say, who asked you anyway? Oh, right. Well, that's to teach her how to be a strong woman. It's because they're liberated men in that family. They have learned in college just how much they need to hate themselves. And they're working their hardest at it. You know, it's just like I have so much respect for women and the Barbie movie. I could just watch it over and over and over again. It's such an important message. As you can tell, we're going to bread. Oh, yeah. But don't worry. We still have about 1 to 1.5 minutes left. Because I don't want you to make me pee by myself alone in this scary haunted house. Hold me while I pee. Oh. Tell me something good. I rub my too much. That's why I have something in my eye. What is the thing that's in my eye? It's not really a nameable thing, you know. It's a speck of meh. This is a piece of lint. This is a very tiny stick. Is it, you know, soil. Soil from the ground. Is it leaves? Is it cat hair? Could be any of those things. It could even be a large princess cut diamond. That would probably bother me a little bit more if that were in my eye than whatever's currently in my eye. Which is like almost out of my eye, which makes me want to keep trying to get it. But also makes me not want to mess with it anymore because it's comfortable. Like actually, as long as I keep my eyes closed, it doesn't really seem to bug. I could try to drip drippy drips into my eyes, but I don't really have any drippy drips, so I'd have to just use like the faucet. And not a terrible idea, but what I should do is just stop rubbing my eyes. I like a baby, I can't stop rubbing my eyes when I get tired. I don't always get cranky when I'm tired, but when I do, I go for, I like some, you know, I like to be burped, and I like some titty. Doesn't matter if I have to burp or not. I just like being encouraged verbally to burp. In the following fashion. Come on, you can do it. Go on, burp. I really don't feel like I need to burp right now, actually, Rachel. Oh, you want to, though. I'm not even sure I want to burp. You want me to tell you to burp? Apparently I do. But I think it's because I like to see you become increasingly frustrated by my inability to burp and apparent unwillingness to burp, despite having asked you to tell me to burp. Well, that's a really complicated fetish, Eric. I don't think I can play this game anymore. Okay, well, then I guess we'll play Plan B again. It's called Baby Spit Up. Ow! It's basically the same game as burp instead of you just saying, come on, burp. You say, come on, puke. Come on now. Puke it all up. Puke up your spaghetti dinner. Anyway, Rachel and I stopped playing that one too. Got a little gross, you know. All right, I'm going to bed. Good night, everybody. Love you. See you later.